What the fuck is this? Why am I not playing this? Fuck is this? I'm getting shit on. I don't know what I'm doing. Purple wire. Cool. I don't know how this works. Sure. I'm not going into the fog, I know that much. I'm lucky I didn't die. I don't even want to go to other rooms, bro. Sure. Let's check it out. I don't even know what's going on here. I hear shit going on and I don't even know what's a player and what's a mob. A bit frosty. How do I unfrost myself? What does this debuff even do? What? Am I supposed to escape? I died. This is an interesting dungeon that just fucks me over. Alright.
Do you think is stronger? I want more efficiently. Even excluding the world slash, we see that the other shrine abilities were extremely broken as well. Whenever Sukuna is up close on somebody, we see that he normally grabs them and just makes a slash of webs on their body. He did this to Higuruma, and he also did this to Yuji in chapter 247, so he can do a lot of damage by just placing his hand on you. We also know that Sukuna with these shrine abilities is a beautiful range fighter because he can send slashes flying at an extremely far range. We see in the fight that he had against Mahoraga, he actually cut a plane that was flying in the sky. Unlike the 10 Shadows, in his shrine state, we see that Sukuna doesn't really have a large abundance of different abilities. Just the dismantle, the cleave, and even the flame arrow, which he doesn't use that often, but we might see the reappearance of in the upcoming fights. The fire arrow is an arrow that burns people down to their bone marrow, as it says in the fan book, and it was even used to defeat Mahoraga in just one hit. Now, I don't have to do too much explaining for this Sukuna section because the shrine section of this video is basically Sukuna doing everything we've seen him do throughout the entire series, except he now has this new world cutting slash that can cut space itself. But for just a quick synopsis, in this form, Sukuna has Dismantle, which is just slashes he sends out flying normally. He also has Cleave, which are slashes that adjust to the person's overall curse energy amount. He also has this new world cutting slash that cuts space itself, and the flame arrow that we saw in the fight with Jogo in Mahoraga. Now that both sides of Sukuna have been covered, the 10 Shadows side of Sukuna and the Shrine side, let's compare the two and see which one is stronger. I want to say first out that undoubtedly Shrine is better offensively. Because Sukuna has these 2 extra arms and an extra mouth, he is able to chant these incantations and make these hand signs for the world cutting slash far faster than he would be able to in any other form. Shrine also allows for more damaging attacks with further range, as we saw the slashes travel farther than any 10 Shadows ability. Like I said earlier, Sukuna was able to hit a plane out of the sky with one of his slashes, which just shows the great range that he has with his Shrine technique. He is also able to do damage faster with his Shrine technique because he can just sort of spam slashes over and over again. But even with all of this in mind, this is all offense. In terms of defense, I think that 10 Shadows has Shrine beat. He's able to adapt and overcome any and all phenomena with Mahoraga's wheel. And with the ability to summon both Mahoraga and Agito, it's very hard to hit somebody like that with Mahoraga and Agito protecting him and also attacking you themselves. So I would say in terms of defense, you can't just use the same attack on the guy over and over again if he eventually just adapts to it or has Maharaga adapt to it. And although you might be thinking, well, you know, this adaptation can be used for offense as well, which is true, it can. But so far, there's no greater offensive attack we've seen Sukuna do than his world-cutting Space Slash, which is a part of his Shrine arsenal, so I have to give attack to Shrine and defense to the 10 Shadows abilities. I would also say that the 10 Shadows has more versatility if you're talking about an arsenal to attack somebody, but you don't really need all of that versatility if you can just use a world-cutting Space Slash. So in terms of range, destructive power, and overall offense, I would say that the Shrine is better than the 10 Shadows technique, but in terms of defense and overall versatility, I think that the 10 Shadows technique is better. And before I give my answer on which form of Sukuna I think is stronger, I just want to say that I completely understand both sides. No matter if you say the 10 Shadows Sukuna is stronger or the Shrine current Sukuna is stronger, I understand completely because there are very good arguments for both sides. But given everything that I've said in this video, I would give the edge to the current Shrine Sukuna with his prime body, because we see now that this form of Sukuna, like Kashimo says, is perfect. He calls this form of Sukuna beautiful even though he's seen Megami Sukuna. We also saw that the narrator said that there's no greater advantage than this body that Sukuna has now. So for those reasons, I think that although this comparison is very, very close, I would give the edge to this current prime body Sukuna that we are witnessing now. And I said at the start that I would ask you the same question at the end.
It's on an Oracle Rube. It's not 800 or 500G. Now he accepts it, what the hell? Okay. I'm not playing an Ice Kevin again. That just seems retarded. Oh hey, that's right, I wanted to test that. Hold up. Chuck this crap in the stash for a hot minute. I want to try this.
Why did Mahito...
What is up, people? People, welcome back to 4Bet Blind. My name is Will. I'm back at the greatest poker room in the world, Portland Meadows Poker, playing a $300 six max tournament with over $7,000 for
Interesting.
remove his armor right before Yuji punched him. Let's talk about it. But before we do, a special shout out to Kyle for the sponsored video. Thank you for the support, man. Now, I know you must be thinking Mahito is punch drunk because this is the dumbest maneuver of all time, but there was actually some strategy here. It's just that in the anime, they don't give us his thought process, so this really makes no sense to anybody who didn't read the manga. So in the manga, he deactivates the armor on that side before he and Yuji go to punch each other in that moment. In the anime, it makes it seem like he does it right before the punch lands, which doesn't really make any sense. So he's doing this as bait, essentially. So the idea here is for Mahito to guide where Yuji's punch is going to go, so that he can set up a counterattack to end the fight. And not only that, he can reinforce his body with cursed energy where Yuji's punch is going to land to minimize the damage. So he removes the armor to make it seem like that's the weakest spot, but he is in fact using the most cursed energy to reinforce that spot and again set up this blow. However, this doesn't work because even though Yuji does fall for the bait, Yuji uses his divergent fist, which means the cursed energy strike lags behind the physical strike. So Mahito glances off the first blow thinking he's fine, but then the real impact comes in and sets him completely off guard. And you already know what's good after that. Todo comes in with the ultimate assist and it's wraps for Mahito.
first. This was one of those magical tournament runs you dream about with tons of hands, so let's dive right in. The first interesting hand starts when I look down at pocket queens in the low jack. The blinds are 300-600, so I open to 1.2k. A loose player on the button makes the call before an unknown player in this small blind 3 bets to 4.8k. This is a pretty small raise, and I'm not super inclined to go multi-way, so I decide a 4-bet is in order. I don't need to go too large though, being in position, so I make it 10k. The button folds and the small blind begins deliberating. I'm not super worried about a jam, as this guy seemed pretty loose.
All in down here.
Fuck, well, I'm not 4-bet folding queens, I snap. The good news is my opponent tells me he doesn't have aces. The bad news is my opponent tells me he has kings. Let's go to the run out.
Just not gonna fold queens for this tournament. Just not in the mood.
Oh!
Nice hit.
And just like that, my tournament is over. Thank
That's interesting. I think this will go very well with a normal. Huh. I think that would go very well with one of these kits. If I just took that spell memory. That would just make my melee be good, no? I want to see what it's like.
Thanks for watching, people. See y'all next episode. Okay, seriously though, I know a lot of you watching are probably wondering, why did you 4-bet? You could have just called. And I gotta tell you people, you are right. Look, I primarily cut my teeth in online tournaments, not so much now, but definitely a few years ago. And if we look at some MTT charts and the low jack response to a small blind 3-bet, queens are not a hand that's flat calling well ever. The problem with using this chart, however, is that it assumes the small blind is going to have bluffs like 9-10 suited, ace-9 suited, king-9 suited at relatively high frequency. But in reality, rather than this being something that happens at relatively high frequency, I think this is more like me experiencing the loving embrace of a woman. It just doesn't happen. Once we start removing those hands from our opponent's range, 4-betting becomes much less attractive. So lesson learned, my tournament is over. Thankfully there are tons of cash games running, so I buy in for $400 and take a seat at a 1-2 table. The first hand of note starts with a button straddle to $5, a call from the small blind and big blind, and me looking down a king-jack offsuit in the low jack. I raise to $30 and the button, small blind, and big blind all make the call, so we're going 4 ways to a flop that comes tray 7-9 with 2 spades. The small blind and big blind check to me, and I check as well. The button is feeling slightly less friendly, however, as he rips all in for his remaining $88. It folds back to me, and with only king high, I make a fairly typical fold. Just kidding. This is an incredibly marginal spot, so you know I'm going to be dumping chips in. More seriously, I'm getting over 2-to-1 odds here and only need about 29% equity. I expect my opponent to make this move with any sort of straight draw, any sort of flush draw, as well as some 7x, 9x, and maybe some pocket pair type hands. With 2 overs, backdoor spades, and some backdoor straight possibilities, I think this hand is just good enough to make the call, so I put the chips in. Off to a run out, which brings the 4 of spades on the turn and the 5 of hearts on the river. As you can see, my opponent had 8-10 offsuit for a bricked open-ended straight draw, so I take this one down, happy to be on the right side of variance this time. Before we move on to the next hand, I want to take a quick moment to shout out Just. Justin, a player who was so desperate to get on the vlog, he actually paid my small blind, after which he did this dance movement or had a stroke at the table. I'm not exactly sure which, but shout out to Justin. Thanks for the support, man, and it was super fun playing with you. Okay, back to poker. This hand starts with 2 players limping when I look down at pocket jacks on the button. I raise to 15 and get called by the big blind and go with limpers. Off to the flop, which comes 3-8-3 rainbow. The big blind checks before the first limper donks for $10. The hijack folds, and I'm looking to get value with my overpair, so I raise to 50. The big blind folds, and the limper makes the call. Heads up to the turn now, which comes the 9 of hearts. He checks, and I think I can get a little bit more value from hands like pocket 7s and maybe an 8. I don't want to go too large though, so I settle for the same size as last street, $50. My opponent takes a few moments to consider his options before flicking in the call. The river is an innocuous 4 of clubs, and my opponent checks once more. My opponent hasn't shown much strength yet, and I think I might be able to squeeze one more street of value. I don't expect him to call a ton of worse hands, so I try and keep the bet on the small side, betting 80 into 260, and laying my opponent better than 3-1 odds. Beginning the race, my opponent goes into the It takes quite some time to make this decision. I'm happy to see him on the chips, getting ready to make the call. What is that other stack? No.